After my last video on building an event photography kit, I thought it might be interesting to find out exactly how much it would cost to build a kit in all of the three major brands ecosystem: Canon, Nikon, and Sony. And so today I'm going to start with Canon, the brand I use, a brand I probably have over $20,000 worth of gear in, or at least I have over that when you combine like my computer and whatnot. But I want to see how much it would cost if I bought the bare essentials today. What I'm going to do is stick to my step-by-step system, and I'm going to go 1 through 5, because after step 5 you're pretty much good to go to shoot most events, and it becomes more about retaining your gear, buying supplemental backups, and that kind of thing. Okay, let's get started. We're gonna go to Canon USA to build my kit. Starting off with step 1, it's going to be really easy because I actually use this camera. The camera I recommend would be the R6. I think the R6 is perhaps the most purpose-built camera ever made for event photography. It does only have 20 megapixels, however, that is not really an issue for the type of work that I do. That includes some editorial stuff, but you guys know I am an event photographer. Event photography rarely, if ever, and truthfully in my experience, has never required more than 20 megapixels. And so I think this is the way to go. It's shooting speeds, it's autofocus, it's low light capability, it's autofocus capability in low light. Everything about it is terrific. I strongly recommend it. So let's go ahead and add that to my cart. Let's go to step 2, which is to buy my first lens. In my guide, I really stressed that you should buy the lenses you need most and the order in which you'll probably need it. And so I'm going to pick up a bread and butter lens, one that I could shoot 90% of my work with if I had to. Now, would I choose to? No, and in fact, I think my own 24-70 gets a lot less use than that, but if I lost all my gear and I had to go shoot an event and I could only take one lens for most events, I would go with a 24-70. Now, a few caveats about the buying guide I didn't mention. I'm going to buy what I think is top of the line. So in this case, I'm sticking with the most modern system that Canon has, the RF system. And I'm going to buy all professional gear, but I am never going to buy professional gear that is more than I actually need. I want to make sure I'm buying what I need and not spending a penny more. And the reason I'm going with the 2.8 version is because A, I'm going to use this lens for the duration of my career. B, that 2.8 is going to come in handy for a lens you're using for many different things. You will likely use it in a low light situation. And because of its nature, it being sort of a medium telephoto, a bit on the wide, a bit on the telephoto, you know, it covers everything. You're going to at times use it for images where you do want to isolate your subject a bit more. And so this is definitely a purchase I would recommend going and getting the 2.8 version of, if I can find it. And another thing, I'm not gonna, in my purchasing decisions, I'm never gonna buy anything that's very niche. Nothing like the 28-70 f2. Very cool lens, but really not necessary. And outside of the scope of this video, I think that it's probably not the way to go in general, even if you have the money, because I personally would rather get a different choice for my low light performance than that lens. But anyway, let's go to the 24-70, which I didn't see pop up. And there's the EF, and here's the RF, 24-70 f2.8. It is $2,400. I swear it went up by $100. I thought it was only $23, but we'll go ahead, add that to cart, and continue shopping. So next, I need my flash. As much as we would all love to skip ahead and get a bunch of cool lenses that do cool things, we need a flash. We're going to run into jobs in which we need one. So here's the issue with Canon's website. I actually noticed it before. The most current version of the flagship flash is not available. It's out of stock. And they have the old version, the 600EX RT, not RT2, which for some reason is $50 more. which really rubs me the wrong way, and I'd like to give Canon the benefit of the doubt, but it seems to me like they know you can't get the normal version, the newest version, and so they're selling you the old one for 50 more. I don't know about that. I'm going to add it to cart, but then we'll subtract $50 to kind of get a better idea of how much the kit really would cost. Continue shopping. Okay, we're on step 4, and step 4 is to get one of 2 lenses, depending on the type of work I'm going to be doing. So if you're going to be shooting birthday parties, smaller events, indoor events, a lot of events with large group photos, events in which you can't physically back up far enough to get the shot you need with a 24mm, events that need really wide establishing shots, you're gonna get a wide angle lens. Now, if you're shooting conferences, maybe some nonprofits, galas, anywhere where you're going to have speakers on stage and you can't physically get close enough with the 24-70, you're going to get a 70-200 first. That recommendation is very easy. We'll start with that actually. The reason being because you need a telephoto, and typically you may notice I'm not saying you need a 17-40 or you need this, or in some cases I am, but there's really, I don't see an advantage to getting like a 100-400. I really think that the RF 70-200 or any 70-200 at f2.8 is the way to go, because you're rarely, if ever, and for me I can honestly say I never felt like I needed a more reach than the 200mm focal length could give me. And you are going to use this lens in situations where you're in low light, and you're going to use this lens in situations where you want to isolate your subject matter, and so you want the 2.8. So $2,800, wild. We're gonna add it to cart. I bought this lens actually from Canon USA, personally, and I think it was $2,500 refurbished. I bought it refurbished because it's all I could find. We've had supply constraints, that kind of thing. I would have bought it new though, personally, but that's just where I'm at. I do recommend buying refurbished generally. Okay, so that was step 4. So step 5 is actually getting whatever you didn't get in step 4. And so let's go back to lenses. Okay, so this is actually what I'm not going to get. I'm not going to get an RF 15-35 f2.8. And the reason being that you will rarely really need that 2.8, and most of the time you're using a wide angle lens, you actually want more depth. You want more depth for crowds. You're not going to shoot a crowd at 2.8. You're not going to shoot large groups of people at 2.8. Ideally, you're not shooting establishing shots at 2.8 unless you really have no choice and it's really got some low lighting. But there are tricks you can use for those types of shots that I've talked about on my channel, to avoid having to need a 2.8 aperture. But we're not going to do that, and we're going to save quite a bit of money because this is a $2,300 lens, new $2,400. We're going to look for the F4 version. I should have filtered the page more down. So here we go, the RF 14-35, you gain 1 millimeter on the focal length, but I don't know if that really will have any real significant impact. F4, like I said, is plenty good for this focal range. And we're gonna go ahead, add that to cart. It is $100 off, wow. So it's $1,600 to $1,700. Canon just doesn't really discount gear. And I mean, I think that's a marketing decision, but it is what it is. Okay, we now have completed our Canon kit. So here's that moment we're going to find out how much it will all cost. So I will proceed to cart. Now remember, it is going to be a little bit off, about $55 off or so, because I had to buy a more expensive flash. But here are our results. The EOS R6 2500. We've got step 2, which would be my RF 24-70 2.8 for 2400. Step 3, I bought my Speedlite 600EX RT. We'll pretend it's Mark II. the RF 70 to 200 f2.8. Following that, and then following that step, we got the RF 14 to 35 f4 IS USM. Okay, our total came out to, it's no joke, after tax, $10,000, 855 cents. And keep in mind, I only went up to step 5. My full guide goes up to step 11. You're not spending money on every step, but I'm reminding you of that because I want you to understand if you're, there's more to buy potentially. It never fully ends, and of course I didn't include memory cards and smaller purchases. And so realistically, I think at some point in your career, you can expect to have about $20,000 of gear if you're including computers and everything, at least. That's what I estimate I have, but I've never really tried to add it all up. And the last thing I want to bring up, and then I'll do my next video, which will be building a Nikon kit, is that if that seems daunting to you, just remember there's no reason to buy it all up front. You don't need to. Most people, pretty much nobody is buying it all up front. I built a kit up over about 5 years, maybe 6, and it was piece by piece. But if you follow the guide I gave, at least you're not going to waste money and you're going to get what you really need first, and you're not going to feel this pressure to have to buy more. Because if you buy something exotic like a 135mm lens as your first lens, you're going to feel behind, like I don't have what I really need. But if you go step 1 and you get a camera, step 2, flash, step 3, 24 to 70, you're going to be really good for a long period of time, and you're not going to feel this pressure unless you're putting it on yourself to have to buy more gear. So I hope this helped. It's interesting to find out how much it would cost for me if I started over and had to buy what I absolutely needed today. Again, you don't have to buy all new, but it was I wanted to see brand new what it would cost. Okay, next video, like I said, will be on Nikon. It's going to be interesting to see how much Nikon will cost in comparison to Canon. So let's get into that one next.